I call the honourable member Aaron Gilmore.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's a wonderful opportunity to stand and talk to the Subordinate Legislation number 3 bill. It's not often that the Regulations Review Committee stands and talks, Mr Speaker, and so it's an honour and a privilege to have the opportunity. And I just want to start to talk about one particular thing. This bill does a really, really important thing, Mr Speaker. It outlaws the export of military products, in particular things that have nuclear or biological weapons or chemical weapons component. And that's a thing, Mr Speaker, I think every New Zealander probably thought was already outlawed, Mr Speaker. But this bill does a number of things and brings in a number of regulations and other things. But that, Mr Speaker, shocked me when I actually realised that actually wasn't currently banned in New Zealand, Mr Speaker. I look forward to being part of the member of the Select Committee that looks at many of these things. The Customs Export Prohibition Order, as I say, has some very interesting things that I think the committee will look into at serious depth, as will the other issues around the tobacco duties and the recent increase in the tobacco duties, which I think is a very important step forward for the health of New Zealanders up and down the country. And I look forward to having the great Deputy Chairperson to my left, Mr Tim McIndoe from Hamilton West, admirably chairing that committee when it needs to be required. Thank you.
I call the honourable member Rajan Prasad Pulavanaka.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Namaste. Mr Speaker, this is my first. It's the first time that I'm participating in a debate of this nature, Subordinate Legislation Confirmation and Validation Bill number 3. And of course, when I was highly sought after Speaker on this bill, and when I had to go into a ballot to make sure that I was the third Speaker, I knew that this would be serious stuff. So whereupon I thought it was really important that I understand what subordinate legislation is all about and the process by which it comes into the House. Of course, Mr Speaker, what this does, it completes my learning. I have also had the privilege of subbing on the Regulations Review Committee.
No, he hasn't got it.
And a committee, it's one of those committees, when you're subbing there for the first time, you go there and assuming to make a contribution.
Who's next for you?
But knowing that there is absolutely no space at all to make any kind of contribution. Because the amounts of papers they have to read, which I bet you most of them don't read, to all the regulations before it's passed. But at least they have the guarantee that there is a legal counsel who has read everything, who comes to that particular committee to offer proper advice. And of course, with Mr. Charles Cheval's chairpersonship and my good friend, the deputy chair, I'm sure it all goes very well. So I was very keen to try to understand what was this procedure by which those bills that have some time-limited provisions have to be brought back to either validate them, change them, or confirm them. And of course, now I know this is the procedure whereby it comes. And then I was interested, Mr. Speaker, in the specific provisions or regulations that are being confirmed here. And you know, it's a tremendous learning that there are these provisions. And listeners who are participating today in this debate on television would be very, very interested to know what are the specific provisions that are in this bill and that they will go from here to the Regulations Review Committee. Of course, I did not know, Mr. Speaker, that there is a levy on all chicken eggs produced in New Zealand for sale. Having known that, then that's a good question. I've been busy working out, shock, absolutely. But what is more interesting is to know where does that levy go. It's payable to the Egg Producers Federation of New Zealand Incorporated. And this particular order, which came into force on 20 December 2010, actually expires in 6 months. So obviously there was a very good reason why it was limited to 6 months, and now it's being confirmed. So I hope the Regulations Review Committee has a good think about this, because they will want to know what's happened to the money, where it's gone, has it been put to the right use, and whether it's time to confirm that as an ongoing provision. So here, now I can see how the serious business of the House and the serious business of the Regulations Review Committee actually now makes much more sense to me, and now I understand why it was such scintillating discussion when I subbed on that committee once. There's another one. There's the Commodity Levies Tamarillo's Order 2010, Mr. Speaker. Now, there is also a levy on tamarillos grown for commercial purposes in New Zealand. And of course you will want to know, where does that money go? It actually goes to the New Zealand Tamarillo Growers Association. Amazing. And here, and I didn't know there was one. I love tamarillos, but of course the Regulations Review Committee will want to know, where did that money go to? Was it useful? And now is it time to confirm this particular regulations? Of course, the ones about trout has already been spoken about, Mr. Speaker. This Customs Import Prohibition Trout Order 2010 prohibits the importation of trout and trout products in quantities of 10 or more kilograms. So a little bit is fine. Too much, you need.
Order.
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. Of course, I know Mr. Speaker does not import trout products, but we do as a country, and of course these are subject. It can be brought in, but the Minister of Conservation has to be involved if it's any more than that. So here is a regulation about that, and the Regulations Review Committee will ponder deep into the night to wonder whether this one is the one. But perhaps there is one of the most serious ones, a customs export prohibition livestock for slaughter order. Now, I'm not a meat eater, Mr. Speaker, so consequently my sympathy is with the animals. And so these poor animals, I don't know why I have to send out cattle, deer, goat, sheep for slaughter overseas. And so at least we know, there's a little piece of me that says at least, it is prohibited, but it can be approved by the Chief Executive of the Ministry of Agriculture under certain conditions. And I would urge the Regulations Review Committee to have a good look at this one, because we want to make sure, at least for a vegetarian like me, that we do this under proper conditions, and if we don't have to do it, we shouldn't. So that's a very important role that this particular bill refers to the Regulations Review Committee, and I know that my friend Tim McIndoe will give this very, very serious. Then there's the one about the excise and excise equivalent duties, tobacco products, indexation and separate 10% increase, Amendment Order 2010. Can the Regulations Review Committee look at shorter names for some of these things? Because it's so long. But this is the one about the extra excise on and then there's another one on excise and excise equivalent duties on alcohol beverages. So these are the rules by which there's adjustment to excise and excise equivalent duties on alcoholic beverages to reflect the movements in the CPI. So it's a very important role. But then comes the customs export prohibition. And these ones are really about some of our treasures being exported out of here. There are rules that are coming up for confirmation here around the export of pounamu, green lip mussels, dual-use goods like those that the previous speaker spoke about that might be used in nuclear production program. So these are very, very serious regulations around really important matters that this bill brings here and is referred to my esteemed colleagues in the Regulations Review Committee. Then there's the one about Customs Import Prohibition Order. This, I'm sure that the Minister of Police would be very interested in this one. This is the one about the prohibitions on importation of offensive weapons, knuckle dusters, various knives, and bayonets. So here is the and motor vehicles with inaccurate odometers. Very, very specific, important regulation that it's coming up for confirmation, and our friends in the Regulations Review Committee will ponder over many, many arguments from either side, have a good look at this, and bring it back to that. I look forward to the committee stages of this bill. We'll ask hard questions of the member in the chair about this particular. What about Land Transport Act? Here it's about land transport motor vehicle registration, whole series of rules about registering motor vehicles and cancelling registration, licensing motor vehicles, change of use of motor vehicles. So these are those other ones that come in. Then there's another one, Mr. Speaker, about the New Zealand Superannuation and Retirement Income Act 2001. Of course, this is the one about increasing most benefits and pensions and allowances. Of course, it's very important these days because there are a lot more people who are accessing these, particularly, and not just the increase in unemployment benefits and etc., but also those on superannuation as well. So the interests of a large number of people are involved in this particular, and of course the committee will want to validate and confirm those particular rules as well. Then there's the one about Hong Kong and tariff, the one that the Greens are not supporting, and preferential rates of duty, and I'm sure that now that we're going to have it won't be unanimous, there'll be great debate in the House. And then the war pensions one, and maybe the committee might like to just, in addition, and say in parentheses on the side, I wonder when the overhaul and updating of the War Pensions Act will come into place. Perhaps as you look at the regulations around that, this might be a good time to and then, of course, the most fascinating one is the Wine Act 2003. This is it's quite interesting. There is a levy on those who grow grapes. However, the levy is not imposed in relation to the sale of the grape wine to another winery in New Zealand. So you can sell it to other wineries, and there's no levy on that. But in some other places there are. So there you go. I learned more about a different part of wine. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a really important bill which we're happy to support the Select Committee, and I'll look forward to the report back. Thank you.
Call Sandra Gowdy.
Speaker, I'm delighted to be able to take